Nice. Well, cool, man. That's awesome. What is I mean, and this may be a thing that you're still sort of settling on as you continue the show, but it's like, is the goal to be more technical focused? Is the goal to be more product focused? What's sort of the direction that you guys are trying to cover?
So certainly more product focused growth, uh, marketing, just things that aren't tackled as much. So my favorite thing to do, or not, I mean, the favorite, but one of my favorite things to do in crypto is taking complex topics in terms of blockchain architecture and infrastructure and trying to make it slightly accessible or slightly more accessible to people, because it's at the end of the day it's a numbers game where the more people you can involve and get inputs from and have this battleground of ideas, going off against each other, the more the probability of something interesting happening. And so it's just trying to increase the funnel of people who participate in crypto discussions and conversations. And so yeah, I mean, so far it's been pretty non-technical. I mean, the DeFi panel was slightly technical, but going forward, the mission of the podcast is to really get everybody involved in the crypto conversation and look at it from alternating views. And just like, I mean, one thing that I'm not a big fan of in the EVM ecosystem, or not EVM ecosystem, Ethereum ecosystem specifically, is that it's very academic, and you need like a paper for everything, and everything is super, um, like people will just bring all sorts of academic considerations, and I find that the pragmatic side of things kind of suffers a little bit, and maybe it excludes certain people from the conversation, not on purpose, but just by the construction of the people who actually care about Ethereum. And so I think that's something that needs to change. Um, and that's what I've been trying to do with, I mean, not just Lightspeed, but also on my own time on shit posting on the Bird app, or I guess now the X app.
Yeah,
Oh
whatever this X thing
man,
is.
how do you feel? How do you feel about that? Quick tangent to talk about this. You are you have a big following on Twitter, so I'm curious to know your thoughts on the rebranding here.
I mean, I don't really care about it, to be honest. I don't really have that much of an opinion. The one thing that I did not like was that the favicon on the browser tabs was changed from a bird to an X, and so I have a bunch of browser tabs open, and I'm kind of just like, where the hell was I? Like, it took my lizard brain a second to get used to it, but I mean, in terms of the branding itself, I don't really care. Like, he can do whatever he wants to do. It's up to him, right? I don't really.
I think it's only a matter of time until the actual domain changes. Like if you go to x.com, which was Elon Musk started a company way back in the day, him and his brother, maybe, I think, something. And they did a x.com like right before PayPal and X like merged together. But I guess if you go to x.com right now, it redirects to Twitter. So maybe the domain's going to change too, which will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one thing I'll touch upon, which completely unrelated to crypto or Solana or anything that probably anybody cares about, but one thing that I've noticed a lot with this rebrand in the past day or two is how many people have opinions on it, and how many people kind of just tell him he's wrong. And it's like, so I'm not like an Elon fan. I mean, I used to be a pretty big Elon fan, but since Twitter, I don't think he's done it very well. So I'm not maybe as much of a fan. But one thing I really don't like is a lot of people on this app just kind of tell him how to do his job and say like, you're wrong and you shouldn't do it this way. And it's like, it's weird how with how much certainty people say these opinions. And it's an interesting parallel to crypto, where like the VCs and some of the other, let's say, non-sophisticated people talk to crypto founders about how they should build their products and their protocols and their tokenomics and all these things. And as a builder, it's super important to understand that your product and your vision better than anybody else. And you, at the end of the day, like, you need to be able to take in that input, consider it, but ultimately make your own decision, as opposed to just saying or doing whatever the community asks you to do, right? Like, if, I mean, obviously, if the community is saying like, hey, you're scamming me, like, obviously do not scam people. Like, do not do anything ridiculous. But if it's like a product decision, like, I think this logo will be better because it's going to tie in with like a future image, and maybe we're going to integrate some other things. right? Trust your gut. Just do the thing. Yeah.
That's like almost by definition, anyone who has an opinion about what a leader is doing is missing information because they don't have the
Almost
vision that the
100% of the
leader
time.
has,
Yes.
right? Even it's like you might disagree with the vision, but it doesn't matter. Like you don't know it. You don't know what the future plans are. So to your point, it's like we don't know how today's branding is going to play into something on the roadmap 6 months from now, right? And so it's like I totally get people being like, oh, I don't really like this logo, or oh, that seems weird to me. But to have like an opinion like, oh, they're wrong, this is the wrong move, is like, well, you don't you don't have enough context to make that call, right?
Yeah.
Who
And
knows what the grand plan is 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now.
exactly. And there's also, this is actually, maybe I'll bring it to Helius just because I'm going to burst if I don't show Helius. Uh, so, I mean,
We
obviously,
made it 10
I
minutes,
think it's a new
Mert.
record. It's
That's
good.
like impressive. Good job. It's
yes. So yeah, I mean, I was talking about, so Helios actually started as a API play, and we were working with a lot of, obviously as an API company, we needed data, and the way to get data on the blockchain is use an RPC provider. And we used them all. I mean, we used a lot, and we weren't really happy with it, like either the cost or the performance or the reliability. There's also some like weird data inconsistency issues with archival on Solana. And I was like, man, why don't we just, like, we should just get our own RPCs and just run this stuff ourselves. And everybody said, like, don't do it. RPCs are commodity. It's a horrible space. There's shitty margins. And basically everybody just said don't do it. And I was like, I mean, I think we're gonna do it. and we did it. And it turns out, I mean, there's actually a lot of unsolved problems in that space. And not only just technical problems, but economic problems, archival problems, just social problems as well. There's just a lot of problems. And basically, the thought process was like, okay, if Helios, the purpose of Helios is to, or the mission of Helios is to accelerate the adoption of crypto powered software and products. And the reason I picked Solana is because I think Solana has the best chance of helping with that, and is the highest leverage uh, thing that you can pull, like the lever that you can pull to actually impact that. And so then I said, like, okay, if the such and such are true, then you can't have inconsistency at the most fundamental layer of development, which is connecting to the RPC nodes. And it didn't matter if it was a bad idea. It's like it has to be done for the success, or at least the increased probability of success for the future of the network, right? Because if you are a DeFi protocol and you're spending $30,000 a month on RPC nodes, I mean, you're probably not even making money. You're going to go broke, and then that's just a net loss for the ecosystem, right? Or you're a data play and you have inconsistent data, that's not going to help anybody. Or maybe you're an arbitrator and your latency sucks. You're not going to be a good arbitrator, right? If you're building on Solana, you probably want to. You probably came to Solana because you like speed. You want to build fast things, fast applications, smooth applications, and obviously a chain is only as strong as its weakest RPC at that point, right? Like if you have a very fast chain but a really shitty RPC, I'm not going to name names, but it's going to affect your impression of Solana. So anyway, that's just an example of like a case in my anecdotal experience where people said, "Don't do this, you're doing it wrong," and I was like, "Okay, well we're going to do it anyways," and it has worked out.
Well, I think there's a perfect segue in there to like shifting over to the OPOS hackathon. Like this hackathon that Helius is one of the sponsors. There's a whole bunch of different sponsors for the tracks, and it's a community run Solana hackathon of encouraging people to build cool things, especially with the quote unquote only possible on Solana tech that Solana does have currently. So like, let's dive into that.
Yeah, so I love
They're
hackathons.
they're super fun.
Obviously, we also organized the Sandstorm one a while back, and basically my thought process here was that I think Solana has somewhat of an upshift in momentum, right? We obviously the SEC thing with
Mm-hmm.
XRP Ripple happened, and Solana, I think Drip is showing what's possible. The DeFi is making a comeback. There are some other things I'm not allowed to disclose, but some stuff that will happen soon. And so we have this momentum, and it's like momentum is kind of a very elusive thing. And while we have it, we should take full advantage of it. And so I said, like, okay, let's just organize a hackathon. Let's build things. Let's take advantage of this, get more eyes on people, especially like ones that want to raise funding and hack on things that maybe haven't had the opportunity to. And so the OPOS, or Only Pops on Solana hackathon, is not like a traditional hackathon where you have like 5 or 6 major sponsors and then you just do like the tracks that they assign, which is a very valid way of doing it. It's just, I think I'm just exploring different ideas here. This one is more like a DIY, like a do-it-yourself hackathon, where anybody can propose a track and incentivize it however they want. It could be, you know, their own tokens. It could be actual money. It could be merch, whatever. It's just up to you to get incentives for and users to build for your track. And so, like right now, for example, we have sponsors from Balaji and Network States to Helium, Phantom, Solana Foundation, Helius, um, Chapter One, a few venture firms, and some games as well. And so we actually have over like 25, 26 tracks right now already, I believe. And so, and like Light Protocol as well for like privacy and all that. So it's essentially just um, and it's actually during Mountain DAO. So I specifically timed it to be the first 3 weeks of August, where, you know, Mountain DAO happens all of August, so that, you know, a lot of cool things happen when you bring people together and have them kind of, you know, mesh together ideas and see what comes out. It's just a numbers game. Somebody said like a tweet the other day, like hackathons rarely produce viable businesses. And it's like, okay, I mean, startups rarely produce viable businesses, right? There's no, the point of a hackathon is obviously ultimately to produce something that's maybe a viable business, but it's just to create new things that didn't exist before. And you never know where that leads, right? But as long as you're always creating things and adding value, those will compound over time. And the much bigger problem is if you have nobody on the chain creating anything. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's an interesting criticism. Like, you know, that hackathons don't produce valid businesses, because it's like, how many valid, successful businesses do you need for a hackathon to have made sense? If it's one business every 5 hackathons that ends up exploding and like changing the face of the ecosystem, uh, that feels like it was well worth it. And that's not even considering sort of all of the things that, you know, are built that are the precursors for future things or get folded into future endeavors
Or
or
even just the
technology.
developer experience
um,
of the
I
the
think
people
I
that
think
built something. It could be something
it,
small, it could be something big, like
it,
building on those building blocks of experience and product, growing those into larger scale things. Like the knock-on effects are great, I think.
And
yeah,
also,
I get wanting to be wary of like not having quantifiable data for certain things, but also a lot of
Mhm.
things are tough to quantify, right? Like it's tough to quantify the fact that so and you know so and so might end up being the person who invents something awesome, and they only did it because they had a great experience in a hackathon 3 years ago, kind of thing.
yeah. And I mean, I think Solana has a history of successful hackathon projects actually forming startups and getting funding.
Absolutely.
So it's quite, I think I would say Solana probably has the best hackathon scene that I know of. I've actually organized a good amount of hackathons just in Toronto, and I actually used to work at Shutterstock where we did that as well for the whole company. And Solana's hackathons are super impressive, and I think, you know, not only are they, I honestly think maybe we're even underexposed to the hackathons. Like I think maybe even more resources in them would be interesting, which is, I think probably everybody would disagree with that, but I think it would be, um, I mean, in case it's not obvious, I'm a big
Do you
hackathon
think
fan.
there's a certain saturation level where it's like too many hackathons in a we'll say over a year? Like right now there's Sandstorm is at the beginning of the year, and then there was the official one put on by Solana Foundation. There's been a couple of smaller ones, and then we're about to have the OPOS hackathon, and then plus there's that thing right after the hackathon, the OPOS hackathon, you know? Uh, so like, do you think there's a saturation point of too many hackathons?
Probably there's probably a saturation point, but at the end of the day, the prizes go to the people. Like the prizes aren't like wasted in that, for example, if nobody submits for your track, you're not gonna. It's fine. Like that money is still there, and you can use it for another hackathon. I just like. I mean, so one thing that I've been yelling at people to do for a while is an accelerator program for only university students for crypto, right? Like the way Y Combinator started was essentially like Paul Graham and co talking to university students who are interested in starting startups, and then it evolved, and then they released they removed the university requirements. But I know where I went to school, we actually had that in our school as well. It wasn't crypto, it was just tech. But I think just having that funnel of people who want to, there's a lot of people that want to build things and experiment and become startup founders and find businesses. And it's our job to find who those people are. It's not easy. And say, hey, here's a program that we've made for you, and recruit those people. Which, I mean, I always talk about community advocacy and evangelism and recruiting. This is what I mean. Like, find people who are aligned with your values. I mean, for example, let's say for the next for the last Grizzlython hackathon, I'm not sure how many people there were, but let's say there was like 4,000. I don't know the exact numbers, but okay, now do how many people in the world are actually involved or interested in building new things and hacking around with new cool tech, right? It's probably more than 4,000. And so it's our job to find those people. And it's not just the foundation's job, right? The foundation is just one team. It's everybody's job. The teams that build on the network, the teams, the community members that produce content, people who make a living on the chain. Um, so is there a saturation point? Yes. But I think the ceiling we haven't, there's a very long way to go still in raising that ceiling.
It's an
And I think we can
unknown
do that.
known
I
or
imagine
known unknown.
I imagine the saturation point changes based on the number of people involved in the ecosystem,
Probably.
right? And how involved they are in hackathons. Uh, what I mean, do you have any ideas on what it takes to attract talent into the Solana ecosystem as opposed to cultivate the talent that's already here?
It's a good question. I think one interesting thing is when I talk to developers that I'm trying to hire, for example, like I'll post like a job ad on LinkedIn, and people will apply, and I'll have like a few chats, and people actually like and engineers that I've interviewed are super excited about Solana, even though they don't know nothing about crypto. And it's because like you can, I mean, at the end of the day, what is Solana, right? Solana is a giant engineering marvel. It's a globally distributed state machine of 3,000 nodes syncing every 400 milliseconds near the speed of light, and anybody can participate, anybody can build anything they want and have programs that run forever, and they can move money at the speed of light with a few lines of code, right? That is a super high leverage and attractive thing for a developer to hear, right? You don't, especially like those ones that are like sick of changing like the HTML, like the color of a button on some React front end, right? It's like, hey, actually, you can use that JavaScript to move money at the speed of light, and you know, be completely permissionlessly start your own thing here on this global network. And that's just not how crypto has been messaged. When you say crypto to these people, they think of scams, dog coins. They think of NFTs, but then they think NFTs are stupid. They think, oh, like why can't I just take a picture of the Mona Lisa? Like, there's just a whole lot of horrible messaging, or like, oh, Bitcoin is killing the environment. Like that, like those should not be the first thing that come to a person's mind when you say crypto. And the fact that those are the things that usually come, at least to the mind of most of the people I've talked to or I've seen, that's horrible, right? That's a colossal failure on everybody's part in this industry. And if we can start turning the the narrative around a little bit, right, and message to people like, hey, this is this incredible new technology that it's a globally shared database that anybody can connect to. You don't have to worry about DevOps, you don't have to worry about infra. You can just connect and write code and get started and build cool things. And guess what? There's also a lot of cool like meta engineering problems here, like rollups or ZKs. And like one joke that I like to make is like at FANG companies, people will ask you about algorithms and data structures in the interviews, but then in your day job, you'll just change the color of a button. In crypto, in the interviews, they will not ask you that, but you'll actually do that in the job, right? Like compression Merkle trees. That is not easy shit. That is like some advanced algo stuff. Same with like DeFi, arbitrage trading. These are all very advanced technical concepts. And so I just feel like it's a super big waste of human capital and engineering talent to work on these other massively bloated bureaucratic systems where you can just come to crypto and just build meaningful things right away. And so, I mean, to James' original question, which is how do we, what's maybe a good way to attract Web2 developers onto crypto? It's like, just tell them that, right? Like they need to know this. They don't know this at all. They just think, oh, like, would I only use a blockchain if I want to eliminate the middleman? It's like, sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons. It's a good one, but it's not the only reason in my view. There's still a lot of things you can do, right? Like shared state is super important. If you want to work on tuning optimized distributed systems, right, and getting performance out of the hardware that's on your computers, right, working with mass scale, there's so many different reasons as a developer why you would consider crypto, and we just need to tell them that. I honestly think that's and like, okay, so like the tactics of that are weird. Like, how do you do that? Obviously hackathons help. Case studies help. I think we probably need like a few viral videos and like some digital advertising and like fine tuning those marketing funnels to have some stuff go viral. Like you guys probably saw Liquid Death and how they went viral. Like the canned water, it's literally just fucking canned water, and it just says Liquid Death, murder your thirst. It's just water. And so if that can go viral, then it's on us. We just need the talent and the ideas meshing together to create that sort of flywheel. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's what I feel.
Yeah, that's I totally agree. I'm stuck over here like pondering how to get information outside of our like existing echo chamber, right? So for example, I think Nick and I and our guests talk about this sort of thing often, right? We've got 30 some episodes out, and I think a lot of our episodes are dedicated to talking about sort of how exciting and interesting working on Solana and crypto in general actually is. But all of our listeners are already in the ecosystem, right? It's like I will wholeheartedly admit that like we're not really doing much marketing, and so we're definitely not bringing people in, at least more than incidentally from sort of Web 2 into Web 3. And I am super interested in figuring out how we can do better at that, right? I agree with you that like that is a failing on my part, right? I have this information, this understanding about a thing, and I am not transmitting that to the people who don't. And I would love to improve whatever skill set is required in order to get that information where it needs to be.
One part of this is, I mean, I wouldn't say, like, there's two aspects of a community, right? There's, you have to cultivate the community and you have to grow the community. So it's totally fine and actually necessary, quite necessary, to have people cultivating the community as well, which obviously, like in this case, would be your role, where you're having conversations with people around the community and getting insights out of them and giving to your audience. And I think that's still a super important part. And going outside of the echo chamber is a very hard thing to do, and I think you need to be super focused in doing only that if you want to really accomplish it. Um, it's also quite similar to some of my thoughts on going multi-chain, right? Like if you're a I don't know, some sort of application on a chain X and you find that you're not getting enough users, and then you go to chain Y, it's like maybe that's worth. I mean, obviously you'd have to do the math, because actually going to different chain is cost you a lot of time and infrastructure debt as well, tech debt, which people not sure if they consider, but okay, like there's an equation there. And what you could have done is, try to go above the crypto echo chamber and onboard people to your app, not your chain, your app, and then your app runs on whatever chain it already runs on. So I think it's, but like, to be clear, I do think it makes sense for some apps or some products, like wallets. It makes sense, I think, right? if you think of wallets as maybe a passport, it makes sense that a passport will grant you access to multiple digital entities, let's say chains. It might make sense for very specifically vertically focused teams as well. Maybe like, let's say like fine art or something, and that's all they do. But for most teams, it's super. I don't want to say bad because I don't like telling people what's good or bad, but I think it's
It needs to be
probably
like a very deliberate
not the highest
decision
leverage thing you can
with
do.
like very specific reasoning for it. I think is what you're trying to say, right? Like it can make sense in some circumstances, but there's probably a high likelihood that when people do make this decision to go multi-chain or are thinking about going multi-chain, it's probably not as deliberate as it should be.
Yeah, like basically, if would you have gone multi-chain before your growth came to a plateau? And if the answer is no, um, just ask yourself, like, am I doing this for a reasonable? Am I doing this for the right reasons, or am I just doing it to maybe keep my VCs happy for a little bit so that my numbers don't suffer in the short term? Which is fine. I mean, sometimes you need to do that, honestly, but you're probably not going to build something that meaningful if you're thinking that short term, right? Going back to my favorite topic, Helius, there's a very specific reason why we're not multi-chain, right? Because if you are multi-chain, we're not going to be able to keep up with all the advancements happening on Solana, and as a result, we won't be able to leverage them to build better experiences, right? So that's actually why I also like Cosmos. Cosmos has this ideology of kind of vertically owning the entire stack. I actually really like that because you have more control, and if you're building something truly meaningful, I think that's probably a better way of doing it. But what do I know? I'm just a bald guy. I should post on my Twitter.
What do I know? Look, RPC providers, I think, is a great example of the cost of going multi-chain, right? Like you mentioned, sort of, there's this massive tech debt that you incur when you go multi-chain. I Helios may like you guys you have a phenomenal team, so you may be able to keep up, but ultimately I can't see you providing the experiences that you provide if you were trying to tackle two opposing architectures, right? In fact, I don't even. It's my mental model of Helios isn't even just an RPC provider, right? Like you provide such sort of ease of entry that I would be very sad to sort of miss out on the ease of use in exchange for multi-chain. Um, so definitely I can see how applying that to other applications would be problematic. Um, I'm curious, like, as we're talking about apps uh, and sort of the notion of being app focused, like onboard to your app instead of onboard to a chain, right? I'm curious, as you're thinking about only possible in Solana, which, by the way, I think is like the best phrase to have come out of this past year that you're sort of championing. So in terms of marketing, it's like it's a great little blurb. And there are, I think, so many things that are only possible on Solana. But as long as we're talking about the only possible on Solana hackathon, what sort of applications are you hoping to see come out of this? What are the things that are only possible on Solana that you are, you know, you would maybe build if you weren't already building something, amazing over at Helios?
So I think there's probably two answers to that. So number one, what applications would I like to see built, or what do I think is only possible on Solana? So I mean, compression is an obvious one, and it 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 requires a mental shift of how you think about digital assets. Like they're not actually like these 10,000 supply personal profile picture collections. They can be, but can be much more than that. And Drip is kind of showing you this, and they're literally saying, actually, no, these are content, right? And these are curated channels that you can subscribe to. It's a very good idea. I'm not going to say genius because I don't want Vib to get his ego even bigger, but it's a great idea. Um, and and so there's a lot of different things you can do with digital assets when you're not constrained by digital or constrained by the economics on the chain. Um, because I mean, you can do, obviously gaming is completely open now. Like before, maybe you do 10,000 assets or 20,000, and then you kind of have to consider the economics. But now you can do over 1 million. And I don't know, let's say you're building like a Habbo hotel or something, you're obviously going to have quite a few items. And so now it makes sense that you can put them on chain and create the economies for that to interact and compose with other applications. And so compression is super cool. And it's also not specifically NFTs, right? It's also, you can use it for, I mean, Light Protocol is using it for privacy, and Gum is using it for social building blocks. And so you can use it for whole sorts of other things. You can probably use it for DeFi even. I think I asked Jerry, the guy who invented compression, and he had some ideas around this as well. So with things like this, it's always going to be hard to get that first step because going to 0 to 1 is super hard. But it's something that I think is perfect for a hackathon for people to ideate on. So compression for sure. And then two is just do the basics right. I think one thing is um we have really good payments apps. I would say like we have Code, super solid app. We have Otter, super solid. Tiplink, super solid. Solana Pay, very good. Like we have very good payments experiences on Solana now. But like, it's not just the product that's enough. Like you need the distribution to be baked into the product. And Code has a good thing for this, where they just give people like $5 and get people to sign up, which is actually what PayPal used to do right before they took off. And so a hackathon isn't just for just the products side of things, but it's also for the rest of the things, right? Distribution, virality, growth. These are all things that you hack together. Um, and the payments experiences themselves, like at those speeds, are only possible on Solana, right? There's no other thing where you can get instant global settlement with basically no fees around the globe, right? If you're using an L2, that's fragmented state, and depending on what kind of L2 you use, it might not even finalize for 7 days. Okay. And, or, I mean, the fees are also not going to get close. So it's like that is actually not possible anywhere else. So payments is a big one. DPIN is another big one. And we're seeing a big shift in this. Like obviously everybody knows Helius Hive Mapper. There's also, Genesis Go with Shadow Drive. There is Teleport, ride sharing. They're actually going to do some very cool things soon that I'm not allowed to disclose, I don't think, but it'll be fun. And it'll be only possible on Solana. And there's even like I forget I think it's the team is called Otoy. It's a high precision performance system where like you can determine, it's like a network of people trying to help you with precise positioning on like for use cases that require it. That's on Solana. That's DPIN. And so DPIN is something that's only possible on crypto, actually, which is only one of the few things that is only possible on crypto in my view. But it's also only possible on Solana because nowhere else do you get such low fees for like crank mechanisms, and also global settlements, such that you don't, like, you can actually scale globally without getting weird into the architecture decisions. So those are some of the things that I think people should focus on. And now there's another question you asked, which is what would I build? I would build something. Ironically, not any of those probably. I'd probably look at building a DeepIn network, but I'm super interested in network states and community oriented stuff these days. So like I think there's it's a complete moonshot, but I think there's some very interesting things you can do and start like a Solana network state, and just like actually align people and crowdfund some land and actually try to get people together and have like a perpetual hackathon. Not like a perpetual hackathon, but like a group of people who are always looking to building new things in crypto. So I would actually be much more interested in literally starting my own network state, which probably people listening was like, what the hell? Like, get over yourself. Which fair enough. But
Helius compound coming soon.
I just think it'd be fun. Like it's a super new idea that wasn't really possible before. But that's, life's too short. Might as well try to do something crazy and try to make it succeed.
That would actually be super super cool. Man, all of those were great ideas. you like fired off like 5 different things, and then a bunch of sub ideas within each of those. That was sweet. Um, Compression has been a big one on my mind recently. I feel like crypto for a while has been plagued by um, like artificial supply constraints. Um, Artificial is probably the wrong word, because on some chains it's not artificial, right? Like the cost of transactions is such that there is a genuine sort of supply constraint. Um, but it's like you just can't pretend that's a thing anymore with compression on Solana. You can't pretend that there's any uh, constraint on supply and be like, yeah, we're going to arbitrarily choose this number for an NFT collection. Instead, you have to think about using NFTs in an unconstrained environment, and where would it be useful. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff there. Deepin is something I don't know as much about that I would love to dig into. Maybe another time. Maybe we chat about that in depth sometime.
Sure, yeah. Deepin is cool because it's essentially a way to bootstrap networks and have skin in the game for the people who are bootstrapping those networks. So they have shared upside, but they have shared downside. So it's in their interest to make the network succeed. And I do believe that crypto in the future will be earned and not bought. So I think because like if you earn crypto, it's much less. There's much less friction, right, than opening a bank account, getting KYC'd, transferring from the exchange to your account, transferring again. But all you can just earn it directly on chain, and I think that's much more.
Yeah, it
There's no
removes so
friction
much
there
friction.
at all.
Earn as in just like that's how you get paid for your work. That's what you mean.
Yeah, like I think it'd be super cool if you would just get paid on chain for things that things like Deepin. Obviously, for that to be feasible, you're going to need to have people, merchants accepting crypto, which is where like the idea of a network stake is actually pretty cool because I mean you can maybe start a network state and maybe like one of the founding principles is like you must accept all currencies, right? Like we're a libertarian organization or something like that, and obviously that's not feasible because those might be shit coins, they might be volatile, and obviously there's going to need to be there's going to need to be some like there's a reason why regulations exist. Like it's not that the regulations are just bad. But at the end of the day, USDC, for example, is a much better way of sending money across the world than anything else I'm aware of. So like the reason the fact that we haven't been able to get people to accept USDC is just a colossal regulation failure because it's just a much better tech. It makes everybody's lives easier. It's cheaper. Um, and so like that's what I mean by doing the fundamental things right. And so on the last episode of Lightspeed, I talked with Balaji and Akshay was talking about like, the biggest lever to pull in terms of crypto products getting product market fit is actually regulation. Like once you get people like de-risk it for merchants and get people to participate in the crypto economy without worrying about, getting, headbutted by Gary Gensler's beautiful, glorious head. I think it's going to be the environment for crypto is going to look different.
Is Man, I totally agree with that point, right? Like uh regulation is good. Regulation is great, and bad regulation is terrible, right? um I feel like it's an amplifier in some ways. uh i I feel powerless in terms of like my ability to influence regulation as it relates to crypto. uh how do we how do we fix that, right? Like how do those of us who are just like, yeah, I'm passionate about this space and I really like what we can do, but also I feel like there's this massive hurdle we have to overcome that I don't feel like I have much control over. Like what I think there's the obvious answer, which is like, well, just put your heads down and keep building and like hope that results speak for themselves over time, and regulation sort of will adapt. But some people might be unhappy with that answer and might be like, well, hold on, there's got to be something more direct that I can do here.
Mm-hmm. So it comes back to Balaji's thing about voice or exit. So sorry. If you don't like how things are being run, you have kind of a few choices. You can voice, right? You can, in this, for example, maybe you're in a, I don't know, maybe you're in San Francisco and you're voting and you are telling people to vote and you are communicating the policies that you think are good, communicating the policies that you think are bad. You're, participating in governance and you are voicing stuff and you are trying to make change that way. That way is hard. It is predominantly how humans have tried, right? You have, but at least like all sorts of weird persuasion tactics and like people who are actually good at speaking, but maybe the content they're saying isn't great. And so, ideally, in a very ideal society, which probably is not going to happen for a while, is you have educated people who are extremely competent in domain X or Y, and much more important that they can communicate it, they can write well, they can speak well, right? This is kind of what university is supposed to do, but it seems like it's not actually doing it. But like people who can write well and speak well, that's super important, because if you cannot communicate, hey, this policy is bad, but if you say like, oh, it's bad because Trump good and X bad, like that's not going to work. Like you need to be able to convincingly make a good, and like lawyers are obviously amazing at this. You need to make a convincing case for your points, and then you need to get advocates, and you need to have your ideas spread, which is essentially a form of marketing, right? You're always kind of doing some sort of sales in life. It's not just software enterprise sales, but you're selling yourself, you're selling your ideas. You're saying, hey, here's how I think about this. And maybe that'll drive change, right? So ideally, everybody's actually in a democracy can advocate. They're good communicators. They can speak. They can write. Okay, that doesn't always work because the system might be corrupt or inefficient, and maybe intentionally so. In that case, what you can do is exit, right? This happens a lot. For example, I did this. Well, I didn't do this. My dad did this. We were in Turkey, and Turkey was not a great place. And we moved to the States and I went to Canada. So we actually just exit. Right? Immigration is exit. So within crypto, you obviously don't probably want to exit out of the entire industry. And so maybe that's not really an option. But it could be an option for subsets of problems within crypto. Like maybe Solana is not neutral enough at the base layer. Maybe you want to go to Ethereum, or maybe Ethereum is too slow. You want to go to Solana, right? So you can exit within the blockchains. And then there's some violent options, of course, but you probably don't want those. You don't want to start a revolution.
I mean, the exit could apply to the network state too, right? It's like, yeah, let's
Exactly.
create a new place. Let's create a new place, and we will physically exit where we are, so that we can have a place that doesn't have the regulations we don't want and does have the regulations we do want.
Yeah, and that's what's happening today to an extent. Like a lot of people from the States and even Canada are not necessarily building so much in the US and Canada anymore. I mean, obviously, there's still quite a few, but you've seen Dubai take off, Singapore take off, Japan, Tokyo, and the Eastern places, and some places like Portugal, for example. So that's like people who feel like you essentially. They're like, okay, like the government is not very friendly to me here. Maybe I either move to like a more friendly jurisdiction like Wyoming for crypto, but I don't know, maybe it's too cold, so maybe now I want to go to Lisbon, right? So you can actually exit that way. Um, but then there's obviously powerful organizations like Coinbase who are choosing the voice part of this, and they're actually going to court and they're saying, "Hey, you're wrong. Here's
Fighting the
why."
good
And
fight.
like it's really, we're lucky that we
Yeah.
have, yeah, and
Yeah.
like so, those are really, and then obviously like the third option is revolution, but you're not going to do a revolution over
Over
shit
shit
I
coins.
mean,
coins.
some people
Yeah,
have probably tried.
yeah.
That's I've got high hopes for Coinbase fighting that fight for us.
I think
That's
they'll win. I
yeah.
I
I mean, there is probably no better organization to sort of take on that fight.
100%. I was at Coinbase, and the teams, the people that they have that they hired, and I would see like new hire announcements on Slack. I look at their background, I'm like, holy shit! I was like, that's a very legit background as a person. I would not going to go against in a court in any way. And so they are very, and like, I mean, I think the SEC's embarrassed themselves pretty well at this point. I think they've lost a ton of credibility, and it's not going to be an easy fight. But I think Coinbase is extremely competent, and they will make us proud.
Nice,
Love it.
nice. Um, This has been awesome, Mert. It's we need to start blocking off like 2 hours, 3 hours for these conversations, because I feel like we could just keep going. It's like the topics are endless, and you have like well thought out opinions on so many things. It's fantastic. Um, you just make it up on the fly. Hey, well, that's then you're really fucking good at it. So, no, man, this has been a blast. I'm super excited for the hackathon in August. I'm super excited to see what people build. The I'm loving the wave of sort of Solana interest right now, and I'm loving your voice about basically saying, what is only possible on Solana, and getting people interested in it. Um, you know, as excited as I am about Coinbase fighting the good fight for crypto regulation broadly, I get super excited seeing your tweets fighting the good fight for Solana on the internet. So thanks for being out there fighting for the rest of us, man.
Of course. I think, yeah, somebody said something like, I think something like similar to what you said, but basically my response was, I think I just say the obvious things that people are probably thinking already. And it's really like the success of it comes from the community being there and engaged. So it's really great to see how engaged of a community we have, and especially throughout all like the shit that has happened to them for like no, they didn't deserve it. Complete externalities. So it's really great to see. Like, big shout out to everybody who listens to this podcast, listens to the voices on Twitter or whatever Discord social like channel that you're on, and who is still here. So the big thank you goes out to them.
Yeah,
For sure. Well, thanks again for coming on, man. Any last things you want to say about the hackathon or Helius? Last minute shills before we sign off.
Of course I do. So number one is hackathon happening August 1st to August 21st. All you need to do is just follow somebody on Twitter that is on Solana, and they'll probably retweet it. You'll have a website that you can go to on August 1st, and you'll be able to see the tracks, and then you can start building anything you want, provided that they fit in the tracks. I mean, you can build anything you want, but if you want to get a reward for it, you want to choose one of the tracks.
There's like a million tracks though, so probably anything you
yeah.
want to build.
I was
There's
looking
some
through all
kind
the
of
tracks, and there's so many good
Yes.
ones in there.
matches
Like
something.
all the big names that you would think of in the space for organizations, like they've got a track. They're trying to get some stuff built, so it's gonna be great.
Yeah. And two is, if you are interested in podcasts like this one, but maybe a bit more non-Solana non-EVM focused, but also just general crypto. We just started a new podcast at Lightspeed, so just go on Twitter and it's Lightspeed Pod HQ. And then if you are interested in building cool things on Solana fast, then shoot me a DM and I'll help you out.
Awesome.
Sick.
Love it.
All right. To the listeners, we'll see you all
Bye-bye.
next week. Thanks for being here.